Hello guys, my name is Phil once again. In this video tutorial, I'm gonna teach you about conditional statements. So let's begin. Before we directly discuss about conditional statements, we have to revise comparison operators. In C# we do have equal to, not equal to, sometimes it's called difference, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to operators. We can use these comparison operators to compare with a pair of integers, floating point numbers, characters, strings, and other reference types. Uh, Comparison operators affect two numbers, two numerical expressions, or a number and a variable. So the comparison expression needs two values, either both of them should be numbers or numerical expressions, or a number and a variable. So the comparison expression should return a boolean value, which is true or false. You can compare different data types in C#. Like car can be compared with integer. Why? Because sometimes car type behaves like a number, which is you can subtract it or add it into and from cars. But here we have to be cautious to compare character with number, because your code can be ambiguous and difficult to read. In C# there are different data types which can be compared, like numbers, characters, booleans, reference to objects. Here, although we can compare different types in C#, but we can directly compare a string with a number. So you have to convert the string into the number, or the number into string, so that you can compare these types. Comparison of integers and characters, as I have mentioned before, we compare their values. We directly compare the binary representation of their value in memory. Comparison of reference to objects, we compare the address they store, which means we compare two references if they point to the same piece of memory. We have four logical operators that we need to recall from our previous video tutorials: AND, OR, negation, and exclusive OR. Both the logical AND and logical OR are only used on Boolean expressions like Boolean values true or false. If you are using the logical AND operator in order to get a true result, both operands must have the same value, which is true. If you are using the OR operator to get a true result, either of the operands must have the value true. If you are again using the logical OR operator in order to get a false result, both of the operands must have the value false. If we are using the logical AND operator in order to get a false result, either of the operands must have the value false. The logical AND operator is also called short circuit because uh, it starts by evaluating the first part of the uh, first operand of the expression. If the left part is evaluated to be false, then it returns false as a result because there is no way that the result can be true. That's why it's called short circuit logical operator AND. Similarly, the logical OR operator works in similar way. It evaluates the first part. If the first part is true, it returns the result as a true. It doesn't lose time in calculating the result of the second part or the second operand. So it returns as a result if either of the part of the expression are true. Then it returns true as a result. That's why it's called short circuit logical operator OR. We have also the logical operators and this one and this one, not this one and this one. They are different. They are similar but different. The difference lies that logical AND operator and logical OR operators are different from this single ampersand and single vertical line because they are full circuit logical operators. It means even if the first part is calculated to some result, the second part should also be evaluated. They are used rarely. Here we don't have to confuse the Boolean operator and the Boolean operator OR with bitwise operators and bitwise operators OR. They are written in the same way but takes different arguments. The Boolean operators take Boolean values and the bitwise operators takes integer expressions, and the result is Boolean for Boolean operators and integer for bitwise operators, logical or and negation operators. The logical OR operator, sometimes it's called the exclusive OR, belongs to the full circuit operator because both operands are calculated one after the other. Okay, this is the point of this video tutorial: conditional statements, if and if else. Conditional statements are the conditional control statements. Because of this conditional statements, the program may behave differently. Here we have a structure or a format for conditional statement. We have if clause and Boolean expression. If this Boolean expression is evaluated to true, then the body of conditional statement is executed. If this is evaluated to false, then this body of the conditional statement is omitted and terminates this if block. If block is from if to the closing brass bracket. So here, even if this if block has a single statement, you need to use the curly brass brackets. conditional statement if else. This is the format. We have Boolean expression, series if block, Boolean expression, body of the conditional statement, and then we have else, then body of the else statement. If this Boolean expression is evaluated to true, body of the conditional statement is executed. Otherwise, body of the else statement is executed. So here the Boolean expression should return true or false value. Nested if statements. Nested if statements means if statement can be located inside another if statement. We call nesting the place of an if or if else structure in the body of another if or else structure. It is not a good practice to exceed 3 nested levels. If you want to have more than 3 conditional statements in your program, you need to separate it into a method or a function. Sequence of if else, if else. Sometimes we need to use a sequence of if structures where the else clause is a new if structure. If you use nested if structures, the code would be pushing too far to the right, so it will be very ambiguous to read, very difficult to navigate. So it's not good idea to have a nested if else structure or if structures. Rather, it's better to have if else, which means the else block can be another if else block. Conditional if statements good practice. As I have mentioned before, even if the if block has a single statement, it should be embedded in curly brackets. Always format the code correctly by offsetting it with 1 tab, or you can count 5 white spaces, otherwise it will be ambiguous or difficult to read. It's better to use switch case structure instead of if else structures or a nested if else statement. Conditional statement switch case. The structure switch case chooses which part of the programming code to execute based on calculated value of a certain expression, which is sometimes called selector. So this is the format for switch case structure. We have a selector. It's not necessary to be an integer selector. It can be string selector, character selector, or other data types. So if the selector matches with this case, then statement of this case is executed, then break. So you better put break statements after each case, even after the default. If you haven't put break statement or break operator after the case, then it will continue to execute the other case. If a match is not found, then statements under default will be executed. So break operator in default case is not mandatory, it is obligatory, optional. Rules for expression in switch. The switch statement is a clear way to implement selection among many options, namely a choice among a few alternative ways for executing the code. It requires a selector which is calculated to a certain value. The selector type can be an integer, number, char, string, or int, as I have mentioned before. Good practice when using switch case. A good practice when using switch statement is to put the default statement at the end, not at the top or at the middle. If you have cases which are most common situations for your program, then put them at the top. If you have rare situations, then their case should be placed at the bottom, and at the end you have to put the default statement. If the case levels are integers, then it is recommended to put them arranged in ascending order. If the values in the case levels are of type char, it is recommended that the case levels are sorted alphabetically. It's obvious. Even string type, you have to put the case levels in sorted alphabetically. This is all about conditional statements. If you have any question, comment down. Thanks for watching.